you felt the joy of spirit. You know, our spiritual journey has a lot of challenges, not the least of which is the uncovering the darker recesses, of our character. And yet with each wound that we uncover and sometimes is torn open, there's always a delight. There's always a joy waiting for us on the other side. In fact, as we mature with our spiritual nature, we find that we can more fully welcome and embrace these openings with gratitude and even joy. So my question is, are you aware of that joy? Are you allowing yourself to generate that joy? Are you grateful for the opportunity to reveal and to hear and heal yet another small sense of self? Identifying, feeling, and expressing this joy is essential to the component, as an essential component of our spiritual journey. It dispels pride. It overcomes fear. It quiets pessimism, and it heals indifference. Good morning, dear friends. Juan Enrique Toro greeting you on this beautiful day, reminding you that we come to you each Sunday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time on this, your YouTube, Facebook, Instagram channel. Delighted to be with you. Also remember, for our Spanish-speaking friends, we repeat this in Spanish 1 hour later, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that you can enjoy it in either language as you wish. Always, thank you for hitting that thumbs up button. Really helps me out. Subscribe so that you know each time we have a live transmission. And again, over and over again, thank you for your donations. It's a real blessing. We've been following the channel. I talked about this story in John. Jesus is coming through town, meets up with this woman at the well, asks her for water in the back, and they end up having a dialogue. In this dialogue, Jesus gently moves her in the direction of a realization, an opening for her. At some point, he says to her, I have water that if you drink of this water, you will never thirst again. And of course, this seemed like a great idea to her, right? So she finally says, well, give me of that water. And he says, go get your husband. And she reveals that the man that she's living with is not her husband. And Jesus says, yeah, he's not your husband. In fact, he's the fifth man. There have been other 5 men that you've been with. And he's basically opening up a wound that this woman had of seeking her joy, her peace, her love in love relationships that really weren't working. Well, the woman was deeply seen. And of course, with the compassion and the love that Jesus presented, that there was a tremendous opening for her. In that opening, she left the well, went into town, and told all the people about what had happened with Jesus, saying, this man is a prophet. He was able to see inside me. He was able to see what was really blocking me from my ultimate joy and happiness. Come see, come listen to this man, because it's really fantastic. In other words, this opening that she had with Jesus was very important for her, because she connected with the joy of finally being free of that sort of addictive relationship cycle that she'd been in. Okay, she hadn't quite made the full transition, but she had an opening, which filled her with joy. But the story doesn't end there, because the disciples who weren't with Jesus at the time had gone into town looking for food. Well, they come back and they offer Jesus some food, because, it's midday and it's time for lunch and all that. And then Jesus replied, I'd like to read you how he replies, because there's a lot of wisdom packed into a very small amount of words that he says, which I'd like to unpack with you today. So this is from John 31 through 36. And he says, meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, Rabbi, eat something. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you do not know about. So the disciples said to one another, surely no one has brought him something to eat. And Jesus said to them, my food is to do the will of him who sent me, to complete his work. Do you not say 4 months more, then comes the harvest? But I tell you, look around and see how the fields are ripe for harvesting. The reaper is already receiving wages and is gathering fruit for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may rejoice together. Well, at first reading, this little story really doesn't have much to teach us, but if we unpack it, we'll find some marvelous teachings for us today. Because, Jesus answers in a mysterious way. The disciples, well-meaning gentlemen, they have you eaten? Eat. And Jesus replies in kind of an interesting and maybe disturbing way, I have food to eat that you do not know about. Huh? What is that about, right? Here we're supposed to be having lunch. And so it's kind of mysterious, but it draws us in. Like, what do you mean by that? And Jesus says, the food that I have, the food that I nurture myself with, is to do the will of him who sent me. This is absolutely fantastic, because what Jesus is telling us that, when we talk about food is something that sustains us, right? It nurtures us. Food is something that we require on a daily basis. It's not that we need it once a week or once a month, right? Food is a constant thing. And Jesus says, I am fed by doing the will of him who sent me. In other words, when I'm engaged in doing what I know to be mine to do, as I'm opening myself and helping others open, I'm fed, I'm nurtured. And this is so beautiful, because what he's saying is that the interaction he just had with the woman at the well, where he was able to help her identify a real healing need, a real opening, a real possibility for her to find greater freedom and greater joy in her life, was something that had fed Jesus deeply. He'd been nurtured by that. He was joyful by that. He uses that as food, right? And he's telling us that we can do the same for ourselves. Now, some of you may say, well, that's easy for Jesus to say, because, he's going around, he's got miracles happening all the time, all kinds of openings. But the rest of the little story really helps us understand how he does it and how we can do it as well. He tells us this interesting story about the sower and the reaper, right? When you sow, you go out into the field and you put your seeds down, right? The seeds are planted, and normally what you do is you wait. He says 4 months, could be 4 months, could be whatever the season is for the harvest to come in. And when the harvest comes in, you go and you celebrate the fruit of the land. You go to celebrate the harvest. You usually don't celebrate when you plant the seed, because, after you plant the seed in the ground, not much has changed. You've moved the ground a little bit, but, visually. And Jesus says, you guys, talking to the disciples, you guys will wait a few months before you celebrate. But lift up your eyes. See what I see, Jesus is saying. And what he's saying is that he's able to focus on the ultimate realization of that seed that has just been planted. In other words, in the invisible, he sees the manifestation, the realization, the embodiment of that harvest before you can actually harvest it with your hands. And he's telling us that this is food, that we can celebrate this before it comes in. Now, this is really big for us because we focus on our life. We believe in our prayer life. We do our meditation work. We have a vision for what we'd like our life to be like. Sometimes we hunker down and we pray with all our hearts for the realization of something, for the manifestation of something that can really help us live a more full life, a free life, a healthier life. And we wait until that prayer is answered. In other words, we wait until we see the manifestation, the realization, the three-dimensional reality of that appear. But Jesus is telling us that that's not right. That the sower and the reaper will celebrate together. This is very important for holding a vision of our life, our loved ones, and the world in general. He's telling us, lift up your eyes. If you've planted the seed, which is holding a consciousness for a prayer that you have in your heart. If you've planted that seed, be able to see the full manifestation, realization of it now. Not sometime in the future, but now. Be able to see it and believe it and feel it. Have joy about it now. The sower and the reaper will celebrate together. You see, you celebrate now for having planted that seed, and you celebrate whenever that seed is fully harvested in your life. Now, I just had some hip replacement surgery a few weeks ago. It was a very successful surgery, and every day I have exercises that I do. I'm walking, I'm feeling better about how things are working out for me in the recovery from that surgery, right? But Jesus would tell me, do you see yourself walking without a walker, without a cane? Do you see yourself standing tall, walking proud, walking without pain? Do you see yourself smiling as you walk and look at the skies and breathe the air? Do you see yourself fully able to have full motion of that leg? You've prayed for that. You've hoped for that. You have a vision for that. And that's true. That's my prayer. Prayer is that I, fully recover, that I have full motion of my leg, that I can stand up without pain and walk freely and joyfully. And so then Jesus says, well, that is an occasion for joy. If you can really see it, if you can really feel it, if you really know it in your heart, then celebrate it. Be joyful. This is fantastic truth for all of us. Are we waiting for God to show up in the three-dimensional world? Jesus is telling us that his food, his nurture, his sustenance comes by lifting up your eyes and holding on to the vision of the full realization of your prayers. And that opens the channel for that prayer to be fully realized. Notice that the woman at the well had this opening. Absolutely. Can't deny it. She was very proud of it. But she had not fully engaged with what that opening meant to her. She's got some future issues to deal with. She's got some, wounds to overcome, some darkness to bring some light into. She's got a process she's got to go through, right? Jesus was aware of that. And yet he is celebrating already the harvest of her release, of her freedom, of her joy. Focusing on that is the key to making that an absolute three-dimensional reality. So we believe before we see. We celebrate before we see. we know before. And there's something else, actually, which is really important. Every day we have our successes and we have our failures or our challenges. And when we have a success in the day, maybe we have a prayer that we from our heart, like life to be a little easier, right? It could be as simple as, I hope I catch the bus on time, right? Right? I hope I find a parking space where I'm going. I'd really love to have a hot cup of coffee before my next appointment. These are small things. Obviously, healing, relationships, financial issues. These are bigger issues that we deal with, but let's just look at the small ones. If you think about those, and if you're able to see yourself, right, lift up your eyes. If you're able to see yourself fully embodying that, realizing that, and if you get to the point where you could actually celebrate it, have joy about it, give thanks for it, before the harvest has come, Jesus is teaching us that this is the key to moving that forward, to making it real. Something else happens. When we focus on that vision, when we put energy on it, whatever pride we have is diminished. Whatever fear we're holding is overcome, because the joy overcomes that, right? Whatever indifference we have just melts away. Any pessimism that we're holding on to can't stand in the front of that stronger, right? Stronger, higher energy of joy and gratitude and absolute faith. So here Jesus tells us this story about the sower and the reaper. Lift up your eyes, he says. Look at those fields. You see empty fields, but I see fields that are ready for the harvest today. Go ahead, celebrate, have joy. Enjoy that moment, because it is the will of the one who sent you. It is lifting your eyes, knowing the truth about yourself, and being grateful for the opportunity to be in that space, which again opens the channels of complete and absolute manifestation and realization of those dreams. Dear friends, Juan Enrique Toro greeting you once again. Thank you for that thumbs up. Thank you for the subscriptions. I try to answer all of your comments. Thank you also for those donations. All of the links to the donations are in the comments below. Thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. And I'm here today reminding you that life is consciousness, and consciousness is life.